They call me a mailman, a carrier of tidings, mostly bills, sometimes a letter from a ghost. This city is a beast, always pumping out new miseries. I've walked its veins, seen its smiles and its darkest alleys. Then came the reassignment, a route nobody wanted, a route with a shadow clinging to its name. Route 9, Old Man Hemlock's route. Hemlock had vanished. His mailbag was found empty. The old-timers told me to watch my step, that some routes have teeth. The first morning, the air felt heavy. This part of town was different, replaced by a silence that pressed down. My new mailbag felt like it was filled with bricks, places where hope had packed its bags and left long ago. Then I turned onto Elm Street, the house everyone warned me about. Elm Street was a forgotten memory. The houses stood like tired old soldiers, paint peeling from their wooden skins. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, something sweet and rotten. And then there was the house, number 237. Unlike its neighbors, this one felt malevolent. All its windows were dark. It was a void, a place where light went to die. It was the mail, piles of it, all addressed to names etched on tombstones in the city cemetery. Yet the deliveries kept coming. I could feel eyes on me from the house itself. A cold, analytical scrutiny. The rain started then, a cold, miserable drizzle, even to the dead. The day arrived. My first delivery to Elm Street's shadow, number 237. The package felt cold, addressed to Silas Blackwood, a name I'd seen on a headstone once. The house loomed, its darkness pulled at me. Each step crunched loud, like walking on bones. I reached the door, old wood, scarred. The silence here was different, expectant. The package seemed to pulse faintly. No sounds came from within, just a void. I could smell the decay, damp wood, wet earth. I slid the package into the slot. It disappeared into the blackness. A deeper sense of dread was taking root. This was just the beginning. The next few days, Elm Street became a regular horror. Not just the house, the street itself seemed to watch. As I approached number 237, other doors would click shut. Curtains would twitch, subtle movements, quick, like startled insects. But I saw them, the neighbors. They knew something. Their silence was louder than any shout. They never spoke to me directly, not about that house, but their eyes followed me, full of pity or maybe fear for me, or for what I represented, the one who walked willingly to that door. Sometimes I'd catch snippets of conversation, hushed tones, carried on the wind. That poor mailman, doesn't he know? Hemlock never came back. Their words were like pebbles, thrown from a distance, meant to warn, or maybe just to mark me, the outsider, the fool. I tried to catch their gaze, to ask, but they'd turn away, vanish behind their faded doors, leaving me alone with the street and with number 237, its silent, brooding presence dominating everything. A dark sun sucking all light towards it. One old woman, Mrs. Henderson from down the block. She once left a small, wilting bouquet by my mail cart. No note, just the flowers. A sad, pathetic offering, like something left at a roadside shrine. Her face, when I saw her later, was etched with a sorrow that went bone deep. She just shook her head, a slow, deliberate motion, her lips pressed tight, as if sealing in a terrible secret. The gesture spoke volumes. More than any warning, it said danger, it said stay away, it said it's already too late for you. Their fear was contagious. It seeped into me, a slow poison. Each furtive glance, each whispered comment, each closed door. They built a wall around that house, a wall of collective dread, and I was the only one forced to cross it. Day after day, the isolation was heavy. I was part of their world, yet separate. Marked by my duty, my blue uniform a target, the carrier of messages to a place no one else dared approach. The neighbors weren't hostile, not exactly. They were just terrified, and their terror was starting to feel very, very real. The mail kept coming, every single day. More packages for Silas Blackwood, letters for Ilara Thorne, magazines for the Hemlock family. The names were a roll call of the departed, each envelope a fresh insult to logic. A new mystery dropped onto my sorting table. The postmarks were always current, the sender addresses legitimate. Online retailers, subscription services, distant unknown correspondence. It was a steady stream, unending, as if death itself had signed up for a catalogue, and the porch of number 237 was its mailbox. The pile grew. I'd push new items through the slot. They'd join the others, unseen, uncollected. I imagined them stacking up inside in the dark, gathering dust, a monument to the forgotten or the ignored. The house itself remained inert, windows still blacked out, covered in grime so thick it looked like tar. No lights ever flickered within, no sounds of movement, just that oppressive, watchful stillness. It felt like a mausoleum, a very busy mausoleum, accepting deliveries for its silent, eternal residents. This daily ritual felt increasingly absurd. Sometimes I'd linger, just a second too long, after the mail slid from my grasp. I'd press my ear to the cold wood of the door, hoping, dreading, to hear something, anything. A footstep, a whisper, the rustle of paper. But there was only the sound of my own breathing, loud in the suffocating quiet, and the faint, persistent smell, that metallic tang mixed with something else now, something cloyingly sweet, like cheap perfume trying to mask a stench. It made my stomach churn, made the hairs on my neck prickle. My curiosity was a bitter seed, taking root in the dark soil of my fear. It gnawed at me. Why the mail? Why these names? Who was sending it? And who or what was on the other side of that door? The questions circled in my head, unanswered, unanswerable. Each delivery was a fresh torment, a reminder of the impossible thing I was doing, feeding letters to a void, and the void felt like it was starting to notice me, to recognize my scent, my routine, the rhythm of my reluctant approach. This wasn't just a house, it was a trap. The feeling started subtly, a prickle on the back of my neck. The kind you get when you walk past a dark alley. You tell yourself it's nothing, just nerves. But this was different. It was specific, focused. It began when I turned onto Elm Street, and it intensified as I approached number 237. By the time I reached the porch, it was a physical pressure, like invisible hands pressing down on my shoulders. A heavy, unseen gaze, fixed on me, studying me, dissecting me with cold, patient intensity. It wasn't coming from the neighbors. Their fear was palpable but distant. This was closer, much closer, emanating from the house itself, from behind those opaque windows, those grimy, sightless eyes that saw everything. I'd scan the facade, looking for a flicker of movement, a parting of the dark fabric, anything. But there was never a sign, just the flat, dead stare of the building. Yet the sensation was undeniable. I was being watched. Not by a person necessarily. It felt older than that, colder, something ancient and predatory. The scrutiny made my skin crawl, made my palms sweat. I found myself hurrying my steps, fumbling with the mail, my usual gruff composure starting to crack. I'd try to whistle, to hum a tune, anything to break the oppressive silence, to prove I wasn't affected. But the sounds died in my throat, swallowed by the heavy atmosphere. The gaze followed me as I retreated, burning into my back until I turned the corner, leaving Elm Street. Only then would the pressure ease, leaving me shaken and increasingly obsessed. Sleep offered little escape. The house started to creep into my dreams, its dark windows, the silent growing pile of mail. The feeling of being watched, it was always there, lurking. My curiosity warred with a primal urge to flee, to demand a transfer, to feign illness. Anything to avoid that street, that house, but a stubborn part of me, the part that had walked these city veins for years, refused to yield. I was a mailman, I delivered the mail. But now the route was delivering something else to me, a creeping, insidious dread. The daily walk to number 237 became unbearable. The mail for the dead felt like a curse in my hands. The feeling of being watched never left. Questions gnawed at my sanity. Who lived there? Why these letters? Why me? The need to see, to understand became overwhelming. That morning, dread mixed with resolve. Today, I wouldn't just deliver the mail. I had to know what secrets lay behind that rotting door. I walked the path, not with reluctance, but with a desperate purpose. I reached the porch. The wood sagged beneath my weight, a warning. This time I went for the doorknob, not the mail slot. My hand trembled as I touched the cold, grimy brass. I expected resistance, but the door clicked open, swinging inward as if it had been waiting. The darkness inside was absolute, a solid wall of black. The smell that wafted out was faint, but vile. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but the itch to know was too strong. I took a breath and stepped across the threshold, into the waiting darkness of number 237. The world changed as I crossed the threshold. Silence swallowed everything. The air was cold, heavy and reeked of bleach, rot and old blood. My boots thudded on the floor, the sound deadened by the darkness. The stench was overwhelming, a choking miasma. Shadows twisted at the edge of my vision, playing tricks on my mind. Each step forward announced my presence to the house. I felt like a grave robber, certain now I was not alone. The house felt aware, conscious of my trespass. As my eyes adjusted, shapes emerged, bulky, draped forms scattered through the room. At first I thought they were furniture, but the shapes were too human. Mannequins, I told myself, but their stillness was unnatural. I drifted toward the nearest one, drawn by morbid curiosity. Its head was tilted, as if listening. The texture of its skin looked too real, too organic. I hesitated, afraid to touch, afraid to confirm my suspicion. The mail for the dead, the stench, these figures, none of it was right. Their stillness was more terrifying than any movement. I focused on the nearest figure, close enough to see a faint stitched seam along its wrist. Another seam ran up the neck, disappearing into the collar. The hair was real, rooted into the scalp. Freckles dotted the exposed skin, just like my sister's. This wasn't plastic or wax, it was something stolen from the living. I scanned the room. Every figure bore subtle imperfections, faint lines, discolorations, stains, old and fresh, marked the floorboards around their feet. The metallic scent of blood, the harsh bleach, it all made sense now. These weren't mannequins, they were constructs made from human skin. The house was a workshop, a charnel house, and the blood was real. My heart hammered as the truth settled in. Mannequins of human skin. I couldn't retreat. Some dark compulsion pulled me deeper. Beyond the room of silent figures, a narrow hallway beckoned, colder and more menacing. The stench was overwhelming, a noxious perfume of rot, bleach, and blood. I pushed onward, boots creaking on warped floorboards. Another doorway loomed, promising further horror. The faces of the dead, the names on the mail, hooked me deeper. I entered the next room, bracing for whatever nightmare awaited. In the center of the room, beneath a cobweb chandelier, stood a long dining table. It was formally set, but the guests were the true horror. Seated around the table were more mannequins, figures in rigid, lifeless poses. A man at the head, a woman across, 2 children at their sides, a family frozen in nightmare. The details were sickeningly precise. A stray hair, a slumped shoulder. Beneath the table, dark pools stained the floor, old and fresh blood. The metallic scent was strongest here, thick in the air. This wasn't just a display, it was a crime scene, a slaughterhouse disguised as a home. The parody of a family dinner was a cruel joke, played out with human remains. A cold sweat slicked my skin as I looked closer. These silent diners. Their skin was stretched taut, eyes staring blankly ahead. There was a grim familiarity to their features. Faces from faded photographs, old newspaper clippings, people who vanished. The realization hit me. These weren't just random skins, this grotesque, silent mockery of life. They stole identities, families, and recreated them in this horrifying tableau. Each mannequin was a trophy. I felt a desperate urge to scream, trapped in this horror, a horror that was still somehow incomplete. I stumbled back, knocking a rickety side chair. The sound was an explosion in the tomb-like silence. My heart leapt into my throat. I froze. My eyes darted around the room from one still, silent figure to the next. There was one figure seated a little apart from the main group at the table, almost in shadow. Perhaps a young woman, her head was bowed low. Another victim, another life stolen and repurposed for this grotesque display. Then I heard it, a sound that was not the house settling. A wet, clicking, almost sucking noise. My eyes snapped towards the figure with the bowed head. The head of the figure began to lift, like bones shifting in their unholy casing, and they fixed directly onto mine. A horrifying, undeniable flicker of awareness ignited within their depths. Time stopped. The world narrowed to the space between me and that thing. Its gaze, cold and ancient, locked onto mine, holding me pinned. Mannequins didn't move, dead skin didn't see, but the eyes were looking at me, seeing me. And there was something in them, a flicker, an intelligence that had no right to exist. A faint sound escaped, a whisper, a horrifying amalgam of sounds. Skin. The word rasped out, laden with an impossible, desperate longing. Need, knew. Its voice was a nightmare made audible. This one was alive, or something hideously close to it, and its words chilled me to the very marrow of my bones. It was looking at my hands, my face, at my living, breathing, warm skin. And in its glassy eyes, that flicker of awareness had now ignited into a raw, primal hunger. And I knew, with a certainty that clawed at my soul, what it yearned for. Its eyes locked onto mine. In this house of stitched nightmares, the mannequin spoke. Need, knew, skin. Primal fear stabbed through me. It lunged, a grotesque puppet animated by some unholy will. Those dead hands reached for me, grasping at my jacket, my arm. The patchwork voice hissed closer now, so warm. We wrestled, a desperate dance with an abomination, my own blood. Its glassy eyes seemed to flare with a terrifying intensity, skin so new, so soft. I, the unwilling offering, was failing to escape their silent collective judgment. My eyes darted around, a weapon, an escape. A broken chair leg lay nearby. I lunged for it, I swung with all my remaining force. The club connected with a sickening thud. It staggered back, it was enough. I tore myself from its grasp and scrambled away, towards the open front door, towards life. A chilling shriek tore through the silence, a cacophony of stolen souls. I could hear its heavy footsteps behind me. The doorway, now represented salvation, seemed miles away. I burst out of the house, into the rain. I didn't stop, my arm throbbed. I risked a glance back. It stood there. The living mannequin. Next time we will have new skin. A promise it would wait. The city lights felt alien, too bright for the horrors I had witnessed. The rain couldn't wash away the horror that had burrowed deep inside. The memory of that place would never fade. I never finished the mail delivery that day. I left the bag on a rain-soaked curb. I handed in my keys, my badge. They just looked at me, perhaps seeing another soul shattered by Route 9. The house on Elm Street was real. The silent, watching mannequins were real. The scar on my arm served as a constant physical reminder, but the true scars were etched far deeper, invisible on my mind. Sleep became a new landscape of torment. I left that city, fled. Some horrors, they follow you. The route remains, always waiting for the next mailman.